From time to time people tell me that it's no use searching government archives for solid, unbelievable UFO reports. The good ones are all hidden, is the typical response I get. But, the fact is, if you keep looking and digging, you will find some intriguing case. That said, here's one of my favorite cases. It's a story involving the UK Ministry of Defence, files kept for 30 years, and a credible police officer. Having said all that, the time has come to tell the story. Barely a week into 1966, there were two noteworthy UFO incidents that were the subject of in-depth inquiries by British authorities and, in one case, led to an on-site investigation by the Ministry of Defence. The fact that one of the witnesses was a serving police officer and the other a famous writer who had been awarded the Order of the British Empire, MBE, made the events even more remarkable. The extraordinary events unfolded in the early hours of January 6, 1966, in the Cheshire town of Wilmslow. Police Constable Colin Perks had started his night shift at 10 p.m. and had no idea that shortly afterwards he would be involved in a face-to-face encounter with what may well have been visitors from another galaxy. In an impressive two-page report submitted to his superior officer after the incident, PC Perks stated, "Sir, I have to inform you that I have been in the police force for almost 4 years. I am in excellent health and have no concerns of any kind." The night of Thursday, January 6 to Friday, January 7, 1966, which was a clear, cold night and started, with a full moon, which made for good visibility. I started work at 10 p.m. on the night of the 6th and had to finish at 6 a.m. on the morning of the 7th. At 1:15 a.m. on the morning of the 7th, I was on duty. At 1:15 a.m. on the 7th I had refreshments at Wilmslow Police Station, where I resumed normal patrol at 2 a.m. that day, when I started walking around the town. On this occasion, I was alone. At around 4 a.m. on the morning of the 7th I was checking the property at the rear of a large block of stores, which are situated off the main A34, Alderley Road, Wilmslow Road. At 4:10 a.m. I was still checking the property and facing the rear of the stores when I heard a high-pitched groan. For a moment, I could not place the noise as it was very unfamiliar to the normal surroundings. I turned around and saw a greenish-gray glow in the sky about 100 yards from me and about 35 feet up. I stopped dead in my tracks and could not believe my eyes. However, I pulled myself together after a couple of seconds and made the following observations. The object was approximately the length of a bus, 30 feet, and estimated to be 20 feet wide. Officer Perks continued, "It was elliptical in shape and emanated a greenish-gray glow that I can only describe as a strange greenish color. It appeared motionless by itself, that is, it did not give the impression of spinning. The object was about 15 feet tall. The object had a flat bottom. At the time it was brightly lit and windy from the east. Although it was cold there was no frost. There was no cloud formation near ground level. The object remained motionless for about 5 seconds and then, without any change in the drone, began to move at high speed in an east-southeast direction. It disappeared from view very quickly. When it began to move it did not appear to turn, but moved laterally with the 30-foot length back and forth. It is possible that the short side given as 20 feet is actually longer, as I was looking underneath the object and may have been deceived. About 500 yards from where I was there is an electric railroad line, but the noise I heard had nothing to do with either electric or diesel trains. About 50 yards from where I was there is a power company transformer. There is no doubt that the object I saw had a sharp, distinct and definite shape and was of a solid substance. However, I saw no vent, porthole, or other place of access. The glow was coming from outside the object and was the only visible light. After receiving the report from Police Constable Colin Perks, his Chief Deputy Commissioner contacted the Ministry of Aviation, and from there the report was forwarded to the Ministry of Defence in Whitehall. Interestingly, from the publicly acknowledged UFO office in the MOD's main building, the report was forwarded to a covert division of the MOD's Defence Intelligence Staff known as DI-61. Perhaps aware that this was no ordinary report, DI-61 sent agents to Wilmslow to interview PC Perks and investigate the area where the UFO had been sighted. Agent Perks was interviewed by DI-61E Air on February 1, 1966, reported Flight Lieutenant MJPH Mercer in a restricted memorandum written in response to the DI-61 investigation. He was questioned on a number of points arising from the statement he made on January 8. What kind of noise did the UFO make? What was its speed when it began to move? What was its altitude? The DI-61 agents asked. Impressed by Perks' conviction, DI-61 proceeded to the site of the UFO encounter. Upon arriving at the location where Agent Perks had seen the UFO, the DI-61 team noted that the morning after the incident a glass-like substance had been found on the ground below the location where the UFO had been sighted. Although DI-61 felt that there was not enough firm evidence to establish a definitive connection, it should be noted that their investigation was extremely meticulous. After interviewing the policeman at length, examining his report and visiting the area of the sighting, DI-61 stated in his final analysis of the case that, while it is not possible to reach any definite conclusions, there is no reason to doubt the fact that this policeman saw something completely outside his previous experience. I wholeheartedly agree with this surprisingly frank, albeit carefully worded, statement. 2 weeks after these extraordinary events took place, Constable Perks was granted permission to relate the details of his encounter to the media. However, until the official files were declassified, there was never any inkling that Perks had been visited by the authorities. Had he been advised by his superiors or the Ministry of Defense to omit this part of the story when speaking to the press? Almost certainly. Largely because of the publicity surrounding the Perks affair, several people contacted the MOD to corroborate the officer's account. "I don't want any publicity," one of those people wrote to the MOD. It was 12 months before PC Perks' encounter, he explained, when an unusual-looking object came into view in his hometown of St. Helens, Lancashire. It was towards the end of March 1965. At 4:00 p.m. on a fine, windy day, he began. It was towards the end of March 1965. At 4:00 p.m. on a fine, windy day, he began. I was in the garden when I heard a very high-pitched moan. Realizing that it didn't sound like a normal plane, which happened very often, I looked up. In doing so, he got the shock of his life. An object totally unlike anything he had ever seen before was moving through the sky at high speed. Egg-shaped and very similar to the UFO seen by PC Perks, the craft took to the skies over Lancashire with ease. Then, to my amazement, he continued, and without slowing down, it stopped short and remained completely motionless for about 3 minutes. Then, instead of continuing on its straight trajectory, it moved skyward until it disappeared. The object was not spinning in any way or zigzagging upward, but rather it was as if a piece of string was pulling on it. I know this story sounds fantastic, the witness conceded to the MOD, but I am not given to seeing things that do not exist, and I firmly believe that this object is from another world. Please let me know if anyone else reported seeing anything like it, or if I was seeing things, because it simply could not have been mistaken for an aircraft, no matter how supersonic it was. Like the PC Perks encounter, this particular one was filed as unexplained. And still more testimony came to Whitehall in support of the officer's report. In a one-page report, forwarded to DI-65, a Department of the Defense staff associated with DI-61, witnesses, a Mr. D. Winstone and his girlfriend, reported that at 10:50 p.m. on the night of February 4, 1966, they saw in the vicinity of London Airport, author's note, now Heathrow, an egg-shaped object that was bright green in color. In this particular case, the couple's account was communicated to the Ministry of Defense before aspects of the PC Perks encounter were made public, which effectively rules out a hoax. There was also a married couple who contacted the MOD to report that they too had a story to tell, this time about a UFO emitting a whine virtually identical to that described by PC Perks. In this case, however, the couple's experience had occurred in Switzerland. In other words, whatever the nature of the UFO seen by Agent Perks, it appears to have been more active in early 1966. If you think this is an isolated case, you're mistaken. Here's another good, solid case involving the UK police. Just 5 months after Betty and Barney Hill's nighttime encounter in September 1961, a similar incident occurred in the UK. In this case, The witness was a man named Ronald Wildman. It was in the early morning hours of February 9, 1962 that Wildman had an extraordinary experience, which led him to fully believe that he had seen a UFO up close. So amazed, and even slightly disturbed, by what had happened, Wildman contacted the local police. It was through the police that the UK Air Ministry, now Ministry of Defence, learned of the story. The press, tipped off by someone from the police, picked up the story, leading the UK UFO research community to visit Wildman and ask him about what he had seen. The fact that the Air Ministry considered it important that Wildman's case be investigated by the PNSS speaks volumes about his credibility. Having said all this, let's take a look at the initial report prepared by the PNSS officer, Sergeant C.J. Perry. He wrote, at Aylesbury, on February 16, 1962, at 3:30 p.m., I visited the civil police and requested information about an alleged flying saucer incident. The civil police authorities gave me every facility and, although no official report had been made, details of the incident were recorded in the station occurrence book. The details are as follows. Mr. Ronald Wildman of Luton, a car collection driver, was traveling along the Aston Clinton Road at about 0330 hours on February 9, 1962, when he encountered a hovercraft-like object flying approximately 30 feet above the road's surface. As it approached, it was traveling at 40 miles per hour, but an unknown force slowed it to 20 miles per hour over a distance of 400 ed. Then the object suddenly flew away. He described the object as about 40 feet wide, oval in shape with a series of small portholes around the bottom edge. It emitted a fluorescent glow, but was otherwise unlit. Mr. Wildman reported the incident to a police patrol car who alerted the duty sergeant, Sergeant Schofield. A patrol car was sent to the area, but no trace of the flying saucer was seen again. In the opinion of the local police, Mr. Wildman's report was entirely authentic, and the experience was not a figment of the imagination. They saw that he was obviously shocked. I spoke with Sergeant Schofield and one of the officers to whom the incident was reported. Both were convinced that Mr. Wildman was genuinely affected by his experience. Not only that, there was evidence that Wildman had a case of missing time. An alien abduction, perhaps.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to support this kind of content. See you on the next travel.